INEC wraps up permanent voters card collection ahead of elections on Saturday.
Economic and Financial Crimes Commission petitions National Judicial Council on Justice Onoge.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we are counting down to the 2019 polls. 4 days to go.
It's 4 days to go, and Nigerians will determine who leads the country for another 4 years.
And for several months now, several agencies of government and civil society organizations have been working on strategies to ensure a hitch-free process.
Well, these efforts are also in the, you'll find them in the areas of providing security, the voter education and enlightenment, political education for political parties, as well as other actors in the electoral process. All this is aimed at ensuring that the electorate is, will be exercising their right on election day.
Well, on its part, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has reviewed the guidelines for the elections, extended the date for the collection of PVCs, which, by the way, ended yesterday. Exactly. And INEC, of course, has proceeded with several meetings with state and non-state actors, including civil society organizations, election observers for both local and international. The police also have been deploying officers across the country to ensure that there is security for voters in the course of the elections.
This, as well as other efforts, are targeted at disabusing the minds of voters, especially when you see that there have been issues about voter apathy. From turning off for the exercise, actually, this is to enable them exercise their franchise, like we said, to the very minutest detail, and also to dispel aspects of fake news, rumors, and all the likes.
Well, now that the stage is virtually set for the elections to commence on on Saturday, one question to ask is the final moments before the polling begins, what is it that needs to be done to ensure that ultimately the elections are peaceful, free, fair, and credible? And what role should there be for state and non-state actors in the last 4 days before polling begins?
Pertinent questions, really, Kingsley. And this is a focus on Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you for joining us. As usual, we'll bring to you our companion segment. By the way, this broadcast is beaming live on Africa's largest television network, the NTA. My name is Blessing Abu. Welcome to today's edition.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo, joining my colleague Blessing to also welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we are broadcasting live from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's Africa's largest television network. We are right here at the Abuja headquarters studios. It's a foggy morning in the Federal Capital Territory. But regardless, we'll proceed with the program. And here are the highlights of the morning news with our colleague, Ifeoma Ojinta. Hi, Ifeoma. Good morning.
Hello, Kingsley, and Blessing. Here is the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has assured traditional rulers in the country of his unwavering commitment to the fight against corruption and respect for traditional institutions. The president gave the assurance during a meeting with traditional rulers in Ogun State as part of the APC presidential campaign visit to Ogun State.
In all the 32 states I have listed so far, is to remind Nigerians where we were when we came into the administration, where we are now, and where we hope to be if we are re-elected.
The Emir of Ilori, Dr. Ibrahim Sulu Gambari, has expressed formal support for the next level movements being spearheaded by President Muhammadu Buhari so that Nigeria's infrastructural development drive can be sustained for national prosperity. The Emir made his position while leading paramount rulers in the state to receive President Muhammadu Buhari on a courtesy visit to his palace.
Election is just so that there is peace, there is tranquility, there is no bloodletting, there is no destruction of properties. That by itself is an achievement.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has rounded off house-to-house campaign in Ikorodu and Ekpe axis of Lagos State. The Vice President advised the people not to sell their votes and urged them to vote massively for President Muhammadu Buhari and other candidates of the APC. Governor Akinwumi Ambode of Lagos State and Abike Dabiri, Senior Special Assistant to the President, were among top APC chieftains that joined in the campaign.
To this level, we want to believe that we have Vice President as our husband.
League of Imams and Alfas in the Southwest have endorsed the re-election bid of President Muhammadu Buhari in Saturday's election. The endorsement was at a town hall meeting organized by the APC Presidential Campaign Council held in Ibadan.
With this man, Nigeria has future.
He's a pious man, a man of integrity. So we don't want those who have looted our treasure to come back to power.
The People's Democratic Party's presidential standard-bearer, Atiku Abubakar, says if elected, he will restructure the country, revitalize the ports in the South to generate employment, as well as respect the rule of law at all times. Atiku Abubakar was speaking at the Rivers State PDP presidential rally in Port Harcourt.
We must restructure. You see the old Port Harcourt port, you see the other port, we will complete them so that we can create thousands of jobs for young men and women in Rivers State.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, wrapped up the collection of permanent voter cards yesterday after a 3-day extension. Some Nigerians spoke to the NTA on the conclusion of the exercise.
Okay, it's not ready. It's okay, when?
It's not ready.
You're telling me?
Without giving me a reason
to
why
come back
PVC
after election. So what's the essence of getting the PVC?
They've not printed the card. I say it's not possible because you can't prevent me to vote. I have to vote.
All that were reported were printed and sent to the states. It's wrong to tell anybody to come after the elections. But if your name is not on our register, then I'm afraid you have to re-register.
And as Nigerians prepare for the 2019 general elections, the federal government has warned against any forms of threats to internal security before, during, and after the exercise. A statement from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazau, says President Muhammadu Buhari is committed to ensure free, fair, and credible elections and is leaving no stone unturned to ensure peaceful polls. The minister also emphasized that all security agencies have been directed to arrest and prosecute anyone threatening internal security in any form during the elections. The minister advised youths to shun political violence, adding that every citizen have the right to vote for candidates of their choice. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has forwarded a petition to the National Judicial Council against the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who has been on suspension over allegation on non-declaration of assets. This brings to 2 the petitions to the NJC against Justice Walter Onogen. Nigerians have been reassured of enhanced security of lives and property, as well as improved healthcare service delivery if President Muhammadu Buhari is re-elected for the second term. The wife of the president, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, gave the assurance in a message when the Women and Youth Presidential Campaign team visited the palace of the Gomo of Kuje, Haruna Tanko Jibrin.
That President Muhammadu Buhari is a Messiah, but we know that even in the good book, somebody was sent to part way for the Messiah. And we pray and keep praying that God should give us the grace for the president to return and continue the beautiful work he's done.
My call to you, to Nigerians, is to come out on the 16th of February to vote for Baba Buhari again.
The house-to-house campaign was something different. It's a new experience entirely. It has been about peace, security, economy.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Blessing and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
My name is Reverend Living Usoko, the State Chairman of Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria, a Bonny State chapter. The Anchor Brewers program helps me a lot to enlarge my farm. This Anchor Brewers has helped us a lot. And we are telling the federal government and the CBM to continue because it is a help to farmers now. We appreciate it. We ask them to continue. This is what can help the farmers to know that these governments are concerned with the farmers.
Manager people, make we make the right choice, yo. Make we vote for a man of integrity. Hey, so make we gather together and make this change. Work, my people of Nigeria. Together we go carry Nigeria to the next level. Nigeria don't decide. Vote Baba Buhari. Baba Buhari, na man of integrity. Hey, vote Baba Buhari. Man, we no corrupt, we no go chop our money. Hey. Agriculture to the next level, fight corruption to the next level, roads to the next level, electricity to the next level, railway the next level, empower to the next level, with our money. For good health we go, Baba Buhari. My people, for the next level. ABC, next level. Naija people, make we all come out to vote Baba Buhari.
This message is from Buhari Next Level Group.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secret passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results. Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
For decades and after successive administrations...
Can I have the remote, please? It's time to watch my favorite channel.
I'm so sorry, my dear. I really need to continue watching this program on the Nigerian economy.
All this talk about our economy, what is really going on?
A lot has happened over the last 3 years.
Really?
Federal government's policies on prudent management of funds and foreign exchange, efficient collection of taxes and custom duties, TSA, BVN, ghost workers elimination, procurement process, empowerment of anti-corruption agencies, and the diversification of the economy.
Okay, so the results?
Now, all this has allowed the policies increase our foreign exchange reserve and internally generated revenue, blocked leakages, provided funds to execute new projects nationwide, and complete projects abandoned by past administration.
I didn't know all this, so.
Now you know.
The growth of the Nigerian economy is a solid commitment of the federal government. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria. On our business report, the Customs Bus is revealing the readiness to review customs import duty rates for higher revenue generation. Now, Jimobi Walter Naiji is our guide on this report as well as other stories.
The Comptroller General, Nigeria Customs Service, Colonel Hamid Ali, has reiterated customs' resolve to increase the nation's revenue base and strengthen investors' confidence in Nigeria through a revised duty rate. The Comptroller General said the 35% levy, which hitherto was put as a government policy to help the local automotive industry grow, has not been yielding positive results, hence the need to review the duty for an improved revenue generation.
But 20, 30 years along the road, we cannot up to this moment produce a bolt. So which means we have not developed anything. And we are giving away a lot of money, 35% to a council, which does nothing. It's a waste. And if we reduce that, it is our hope, and by the statistics, that the volume of import of cars into Nigeria will increase, and therefore the duty collected by customs will increase.
Equities market closed today on a positive note as NSE all-share index appreciated by 0.8% to close at 31,781.87 basis points, as against plus 0.31% appreciation recorded previously. Its year-to-date returns currently stands at plus 1.12%. Here is a graphic representation of closing figures at the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimobi, for the update on business. Next on Good Morning Nigeria is Newspaper Review.
A newspaper reviewer, Bayo Teobi. Editorial. Welcome, Bayo.
Thank you, Blessing. Good morning.
Good morning.
Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Blessing, let's begin with you.
Okay.
I'm sure you have.
All right. The Daily Trust is the paper with me this morning. Let's start with the electoral stories.
Yes.
Many here to get PVCs as a permanent voter card as deadline expires. That's the lead headline for the Daily Trust. There is a writer, INEC acknowledges challenges. A story starts right there but continues on page 5. And there you have a photograph of one of the centers where the residents were waiting to collect their permanent voter card yesterday. That's at
INEC office in Oyo, in Akwa Ibom State. I'm sure this is the same situation for most people across the country. That's the same yesterday. Okay, that's it about electoral matters. Just above that story we have EFCC arrest ex-SGF, Babachir Lawal, also arraigns him today as is captured, but the story you find on page 4. Onoge, as the kicker, appeal court, I beg your pardon, appeal court hears case today as NJC CCT resume Wednesday. Same page 4 will give you details of that particular story. Kingsley?
All right, I have the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun newspaper from top to bottom. We'll just take all the headlines. Just below the nameplate of the Daily Sun newspaper, you have, of course, the countdown there. Today they got it right. It's 4 days to February 16th. 42 political parties give conditions for fresh peace accord. That story is in greater detail on page 40. The conditions they are giving include the following, that it must be included in the peace accord that security agencies should not arrest leaders of the opposition parties few hours to the election, as was done in the Osun governorship election, and that INEC and security agencies must not exclude opposition parties' agents from collation venues, the polling unit, right up to the final collation level. And it says also that accreditation must be done with party agents physically monitoring the identification of the voters. Those are some of the conditions for the two political parties are given for them to endorse the Fresh Peace Accord, which is intended to be signed tomorrow. Now, back to the stories on the front page of the Daily Sun. Again, federal government wants U.S. on elections with a rider. Buhari campaign team blasts envoy. That's on page 6. This story says, fresh trouble for CJN Onoren. NJC issues him fresh query to unveil final decision tomorrow. Judicial independence under threat, says UN. That's on page 6 in greater detail. And the photograph there shows the PDP presidential campaign rally in Port Harcourt, Rivers yesterday with former President Goodluck Jonathan, Governor Wike, and Atiku Abubakar. Now, below that photograph, you have other headlines. Court sacks Cross River APC governorship candidate, Eno, and others. And then orders INEC to recognize Usani's faction, pages 4 and 5, in greater detail. EFCC arraigns ex-secretary to the government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, today. That's on page 4. Rivers people promise Atiku massive votes. Elections, that's the last headline we're taking there. That's the kicker. Clinton cancels visit to Nigeria. Details on page 40.
Now, let's start with the story that Blessing read. INEC says a lot of registered voters have collected their PVCs. The collection of PVC ended on Monday. Many have collected while others face one challenge or the other. With the stopping of collection PVC, INEC says that the PVCs will be accounted for and will be deposited at the Central Bank of Nigeria. After the mop-up, the uncollected PVCs will be compiled by resident electoral commissioner and collated. INEC will announce the number of PVCs that were not collected. Meanwhile, 2,979 PVCs that were burnt at Isiala-Ngwa, Abia, and 5,987 that were burnt at Kwampan in Plateau State. There was also non-sensitive material that were burnt in Plateau. However, INEC Federal Commissioner says those affected will have to sign a register with the resident electoral commissioner. They are to present their TVCs, temporary voters card, for reproduction of their PVCs. Whether that will meet the current elections that is due in less than 5 days' time is something to be seen. Meanwhile, the commissioner for election observer team has arrived in Nigeria. That is for the Commonwealth Observer Team. They are headed by the former Tanzania President Jakaya Kikwete. Last week, former President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, also led the delegation for the ECOWAS monitoring team. INEC has engaged the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, the Financial Investigation Unit, to track campaign funds of all political parties for 2019 election. In this regard, the National Broadcasting Commission, the Nigeria Communications Commission, the Center for Social Justice, as well as the Nigerian Police Force and 4 other organizations are to work as an interagency campaign finance monitoring group. INEC National Commissioner Antonia Okosi-Simbina says newspapers, radio and television advertisements and billboards will be checked to verify campaign spending. Campaign financing will be published after elections. Now, going to the courts, the Economic Financial Crime Commission is to arraign former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, today. Daily Sun reports that the SY Secretary to the Government of the Federation is to be arraigned before an Abuja High Court presided over by Justice Okike. Meanwhile, the National Judicial Service Commission has named a committee to review the responses to the petition given to the suspended Chief Justice and the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria. In the same vein, the NJC gave 7 days to Justice Walter Onoge to respond to a 3rd petition now that's coming from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The preliminary complaints assessment committee appointed by the NJC is to report to the Judicial Commission on February 13th. Justice Umar Abdullahi, former president of the Court of Appeal, is the interim chairman of the NJC. Meanwhile, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Independence of Judiciary has condemned the suspension of the Chief Justice of Nigeria.
Well, let's go to the foot of the Daily Trust. 2 other stories there, which should bring to our viewers today. Like Kano PDP campaign office set ablaze. That story is on page 7. That's at the foot of the Daily Trust. Kano PDP campaign office set ablaze. The federal government earned 1.662 trillion naira from oil block license renewals and royalties in 1 year. More details about that on page 17. Kingsley, other stories with you?
I've taken the stories on the front page.
Let's take a look at the editorial. The editorial is from the New Telegraph. You find that on page 15. And, well, just before we go to the editorial, just at the foot of page 15 of the same New Telegraph, there is a cartoon that says, "I don't need your money." Here, a robber actually confronts a voter, or well, let's assume it's a voter. So, "I don't need your money. Where is your PVC?" That is a hands up. But just above that, now let's get to the editorial. Now it's saying no to electoral violence. That's the editorial. Bayo.
Yes, no to electoral violence. The atmosphere is charged, but political parties are not helping matters. Like you read earlier on now, a campaign office of the People's Democratic Party was set ablaze in Kano. Only yesterday, while the APC was having its rally in Abeokuta, the APM members who say they have endorsed President Muhammadu Buhari as their candidate were hurling missiles at the podium yesterday. And the concern is all not far-fetched. It's because of the tension that has mounted in the country. Concerns have been expressed by traditional rulers and religious leaders, all of them appealing for peace and for patience for people to vote in an election. Our international friends have also lended their voice to necessity for peaceful election. And the editorial is saying that for all intent and purposes, no effort should be spared to ensure that the elections of Saturday, February 16th, and that of March 2nd are violence-free.
True. We need the peace more than ever.
Yes.
Now, everyone needs to be at peace with oneself.
Before, during, after, and post-elections.
Yes. Nigeria will continue to exist for everyone, despite the desperation of it. All right, Bayo. Thank you very much for coming on today's edition, and tomorrow is another time to see you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
That's it for the newspaper review. We'll take a break now. When we return, it will be time to do the countdown. It's 4 days to go for Saturday's polls.
Speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Nigerian youth have seen the positive effects of the Anko Borrowers program of the Buhari administration, which has improved the country's food security. The homegrown school feeding program is catering for over 9 million pupils, engaging and empowering cooks and farmers. What about the 10 billion naira youth entrepreneurship support project to empower youth with startup loans for businesses? We connect to the next level as more than 1 million market women, traders, artisans and farmers from all over Nigeria are getting empowered through interest-free trader money scheme. Nigeria is proudly in the list of top 10 reforming economies in the world, moving 24 places upwards in the World Bank's ease of doing business. We are making progress. The deaths from terrorism in Nigeria has dropped by 80% according to the Global Terrorism Index. Nigeria is making progress in the fight against corruption. The whistleblowing policy has helped recover looted funds. The enforcement of TAC brought about fiscal discipline, transparency and accountability in government revenue, power generation and distribution in Nigeria has improved tremendously. The off-grid power project has not gone unnoticed. Nigerian youth, let's connect to the next level. This message is powered by Dr. Tony Nwoye, Director Youth Mobilization Presidential Campaign Council.
Here you go.
Madam.
That's it. Those naira are enough.
Hi, dear.
Helen!
You've got so much even after spending so little.
Savings is such a necessity.
You save everywhere, but here, you lose it all.
How?
With this?
Impossible.
New Tika Apic 10X.
Even after applying up to 1 liter of your solution multiple times,
You won't get the same cleaning that Apic gives you in a single round.
and the expense?
Far less compared to your 1 liter of solution. New Tika Apic, tough in cleaning,
Tough in savings.
Medical Mission MMM is offering free services on a wide range of medical issues. Take advantage of these offers, especially by availing yourself of the National Cancer Prevention Program NCPP. You can do so by coming for our Wellness Wednesday program at 31 Bode Thomas Street, Surulere, Lagos every Wednesday from 7 a.m. You also have the opportunity of seeing the specialist and getting expert opinion on any health issues that may have been bothering you. Are you preparing to get married to your sweetheart? Then we have a pre-marital health program that will help you ensure that you start your married life on a healthy footing. Very important health screening and counseling will be made available for you and your partner. You can avail yourself of this opportunity by attending our pre-wedding Wednesday program from 7 a.m. For inquiries, send a mail to info@pinkcruise.org or log on to www.pinkcruise.org or call 0805-633-4288. Mission Pink Cruise, taking wellness to all.
All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are counting down to the 2019 elections. Just 4 days to go. And of course, we have guests with us in the studios to discuss issues pertaining to the general elections which begin on Saturday. First, let's welcome Professor Abdullahi Shehu. Professor Shehu, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, is a former Director General of the ECOWAS Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, otherwise known as GIABA. Professor Shehu, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And also here with us in the studios is Dr. Chris Kwaja. Or Kwaja, sorry, I hope I got the inflection right. Is of the Watching the Vote Working Group. Dr. Kwaja, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. Also here, of course, another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria and a visible face in the course of election observation, Esther Uzoma. She's National Coordinator, Proactive Gender Initiatives, the barrister at law.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And from our Lagos Network Studios, we have another guest.
Yes, we have another guest, Kingsley. We'll have in Lagos, Jamiu Abiola. Jamiu Abiola is a member of Buhari support group and is also a member of the inaugurated Youth and Women Presidential Campaign team. And he's also the son of the late Chief MKO Abiola. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Abiola.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen, because at the bar, she will also be a gentleman. No, all right, let's begin this conversation from our Lagos network studios, where we just introduced Jamiu Abiola. Jamiu, from your perspective, we have just about 96 hours to the commencement of polling for the general elections for 2019. So far, so good, or so far, so worrisome?
So good. The preparations have been made for so many years now. You know that we have a very, very capable and competent chairman of INEC, and he has done a lot of work in terms of letting people know what they have to do and how to discharge their civic responsibilities. And I'm glad that the preparations are made and Nigerians are responding accordingly.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. Back here in the Abuja studios, Esther Uzoma, who, of course, a veteran of election observation.
Yes.
So far, so good, or so far, so worrisome? Same question.
Well, two sides of it. On the part of INEC, fantastic. The INEC we have now, we've never had it before. To the extent that, we have resident electoral commissioners who are drawn from the civil society. All right, we have not had this particular INEC before. Look at the things, that was put in place. First of all, for the next, forever, we now know when elections will be held in this country. That is fantastic. Look at the arrangements they have made so far. All right, and then look at the enthusiasm. Nigerians are willing. Everybody wants PVC. Let's get involved. All right, and then look on the other side of it. Besides INEC, what are the politicians doing? We are seeing a proliferation of hate speech, people threatening others with violence, seeking to undermine the process, burning down party, PVCs. That is disturbing. All right, so on one side, it is good. On the other side, we have cause to worry.
All right, let's find out if there are other concerns too from Dr. Chris Kwaja. We introduced him earlier as from the Watching the Votes Working Group. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, we've been seeing a combination of both the good and the bad. Okay. The good in terms of the preparation on the part of INEC, the good on the part of the enthusiasm amongst Nigerians who are willing to vote because they believe that by voting on Saturday, they fulfilled one of their fundamental obligations of ensuring peaceful transfer of power from one regime to the other. On the bad side, we've seen...
Are you making an assumption with the last clause you just said? I mean, it's the incumbent in seeking re-election.
Yeah, peaceful transfer of power from one regime to the other does not in any way depict the fact that I'm making a very conclusive statement about a change of government. I'm talking about transfer of power from one regime to the other. It can be the incumbent continuing. It can also mean the incumbent losing. So it's that transition. It's both. The second, the other part in terms of the bad signs has to do with the issue of hate speech that my sister talked about. We've seen politicians utter statements that are capable of undermining the electoral process, that are capable of breaching the peace. But for me, the most important point about hate speech is who is affected. When politicians make this speech, the average Nigerian is the worst hit. When they make this speech and people die, people are injured, it's the poor man that dies. It's the poor man that gets injured. Because most of these politicians are well protected with security. They are living in fortified buildings where violence will not reach. And I think it's for Nigerians to begin to organize themselves along the path of resisting any attempts by the politicians to drag them into environment or atmosphere or conditions or situations where violence become a currency for them to engage one another. Okay. Because the average amongst Nigerians, which I call the bottom millions, there are common indicators that unite them: poverty, unemployment, uncertainty about the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chris Kraja. So let's get to Professor Abdullahi Shehu. You've listened to your co-panelists here, and for you too, as a professor of political science, you've seen the terrain, you've watched the terrain, and of course elections have been forever here in the country. What seems to make 2019 giving people such trepidation, such frenzy?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me, and to correct the impression, I'm not a professor of political science, I'm a professor of criminology with political science background. Every human being is a political animal. Well, so far, so good. The terrain is okay. It has the stage is already set. The first important point I would like to make is that the world is watching Nigeria, expecting that Nigeria will now consolidate the great achievement it has achieved, the great achievement it recorded in 2015. In other words, in terms of political transition, we have made significant progress. We have made quantifiable progress. The challenge we face in this election is to make a qualitative and sustainable change to our transition. In other words, to ensure that we improve the quality of our election. And by improving the quality of our election would mean that we will need to look at those things that will make an election dented. And what are they? First of all, the disposition of the electorate before, during, and after the election. It is estimated that about 165 people were killed during the political campaign and registration to the run-up to the 2011 election. And about 1,000 people were killed immediately after the results were announced, and about 165,000 people were displaced as a result of reaction to that election. So if we have these statistics in our hands, what do they actually speak to us in terms of managing a credible election? My sister said, well, everything is perfect with INEC. I'm happy to hear that, but I do not think that it is good to, it is okay to say that everything is perfect. There is a proverb in my local dialect that says, until we see it on the ground. We saw it on the ground in 2015, and it reduced the cost of litigation. There was no violence. So to a large extent, that was a credible election. And it acquired credibility as a result of the key elements of a democratic election: fairness, transparency, okay, credibility that it acquired. So the moment an election is free and fair, I don't know who defines free and fair, but at least the common indices of an election being free and fair is for people to see that justice is done, because justice is the important defining element quality of an election. So if there is fairness, if there is justice and there is transparency, I can tell you that there will be no single case of violence. But violence, we have to understand it in the context as a function of weak and corrupt institutions. When the institutions do not do their work very well, that can lead to violence. And as she commended the INEC, I take opportunity to also commend my former organization, the EFCC, for the wonderful work they have done to try to reduce the influence of money by ensuring that there is effective financial surveillance in both the financial system and on the road. So to that extent, I believe that we are going to address some of the problems with political party financing, and we hope that the election is going to be fair, free, transparent, and credible.
All right, Professor Abdullah Ishewu, thank you very much for your opening salvo. We'll return to you shortly. Now, we know that INEC registered some 84 million voters. We're not sure what numbers we have now with regard to those who have collected their PVCs after the close of the deadline yesterday. But last week, that was on Thursday, a Good Samaritan picked up a PVC that obviously was lost. It was lost at an ATM point, and it belongs to Mary Nkiru Okeke. That was at Garki 2 here in Abuja, Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. It was lost on Thursday, and we have it here with us at the NTA. If you are Mary Nkiru Okeke, please come forward and pick up your PVC. This is the PVC I have in my hand right here. The details, of course, are right there. That's, I understand that we can zoom on it and then get it. The PVC belongs to Mary Nkiru Okeke. It was dropped at an ATM point in Garki 2, Abuja, last Thursday and picked up by a Good Samaritan. So if you are the lady, please come to the Nigerian Television Authority headquarters in Area 11, Abuja, and ask for the general manager of NTA News 24. All right, so that's the announcement that we have. We probably will have the time to repeat it before the program is over. Let's return to our guest. Esther Uzoma, tell us something. You know, there are some phrases we are using now. Say elections to be free, fair, peaceful, credible. When is an election deemed to be free and fair?
Oh, fantastic. At the level of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, where I'm the alternate chairperson, we developed a threshold. Now, that threshold, you know, is basically standards to measure an election. What we are saying there is that if elections, if we hold these elections and they fall beyond this threshold, then nobody can say it is credible. Number one, for instance, is the security, agencies. They must be professional and non-partisan. That is the first indices. The professionalism that we are saying is this: you must not, on that election day, appear, the perception, you must not appear to favor a candidate. The results, the statements issued, for instance, in Osun 1 and 2, past have, specifically from CDD, from Situation Room, from Yaga, all were complaining about the role played by security agencies. What they do is this: their actions, will throw a veneer, give the impression, will make people perceive that the process is corrupt. Because, for instance, when politically exposed person, when the gladiators who are involved in this election, who are not supposed to be moving anywhere, suddenly you see them matching with security, personnel. You have the impression that, oh, this has been skewed. The state is in support of this. And so, that is one of it. Another thing is this: inclusivity. To what extent, for instance, were people, with disabilities, how was it easy for them to participate? Could they access? Were tools made available for them? For instance, people who need braille. What about women who are pregnant? What about the aged? These are some of the, indices. These are, so if they fall, what about, another thing is the card reader. If it fails to a level, to an extent, for instance, if there's a 70% failure, definitely you will not say it was, it was fair. Because that's seeing how the laws and the rules of particularly INEC guidelines have said, listen, it is card reader or nothing. So if there's 70% failure, what does it mean? It means people did not participate because your equipment failed. So these are some of the thresholds.
Suppose it's 40% failure.
Well,
well,
if it's failure of the card reader, if it is 40%, well, with some other variables, yes, these are not standalone issues. And then generally, the insecurity in the country. There's INEC is not omnipotent. INEC can only function when certain conditions are in play. All right. So, for instance, people are burning off PVCs. They are. And, moving on, they have issued, INEC wrote the Inspector General of Police. One would have thought, really, that the police should know that these places should be protected before now. You know how things start. Bushfire starts, first of all, you're smoking here, suddenly, copycats will emerge all over the place. So there are people, who are conscious, strategically, with Machiavellian efficiency, trying to scuttle the process. I'm talking about Nigerians. So eventually, when this, for instance, if we have, if INEC offices say a quarter of the states, PVCs are burnt, hello, and those people did not participate, are we going to say it was a free process? So these are some of the, indices.
Okay, let's bring in again Dr. Chris Kwaja. Now, let's take a look beyond the political grandstanding we've seen and some other variables that you have talked about. Now, the place of the voter, essentially, what's your observation? How is the voter being prepared to actually take on the polls come Saturday and even March 2nd?
I think I need to make this point quickly, that election is a rule-based game, and it has certain indicators that will show that that election was peaceful, credible, or whatever.
Free and fair.
Free and fair, as we say. But the most important point for me, which an average citizen is more concerned with, is the fact that there must be harmony between the process and the outcome. Where the outcome betrays the process in terms of how results are generated, which do not or does not tally with the procedure through which those results emerged, you begin to question the credibility of that election. And for an average voter, he is concerned about how each of the stakeholders that have been identified with specific mandates on the conduct of that election behave or operate. INEC, security agencies, the media, political parties, the candidates, the judiciary, they all, civil society, they all have specific responsibilities. And where these responsibilities are not discharged in a way that recognizes the importance of ensuring that the rules upon which this election is to be conducted are followed, you begin to have issues around inconclusive elections, issues around party agents rejecting election results and refusing to sign. You begin to have instances where presiding officers use their own fiat to cancel elections. But the most important point for me is that civic vigilance on the part of the voter is the most important currency for the voter when it comes to engaging with the electoral process. For us in watching the vote, what we've been able to do is to deploy observers, and they are supposed to be there as early as 7 a.m. to monitor the procedure, the setting up of that area, to monitor how these materials are brought in, to monitor how every individual on that at that polling unit behaves, and how the procedures are followed down to the counting of the result, and how these results are also transmitted to the collation centers. And as they do that, the observers send us real-time information. For each of those stages, we have a checklist. And for each of these stages, they send through specific numbers that they have, unique to each of the polling units. They send us information which we also process. And I think there are many other actors. The Nigerian Situation Room is also having its own. CDD is having its own. There are many other organizations that have specific areas that they are monitoring when it comes to the electoral process.
All right, Dr. Kwaja, what you just explained now is usually framed around the expression, let your votes count. Right, that's to say that's the detail of what you have given. But we'll return to you. But let's go back to Jamil Abiola in our Lagos network studios. Jamil, of course, you'll listen to the other guests. From what you see, are we set for the elections commencing on Saturday, where and when the votes will count, truly and expressly so?
We are. And, everything starts from the beginning of the process. When you have a president who picks the right person to head a very sensitive organization like INEC, then half of the problem has been solved. This current chairman of INEC, I keep emphasizing, is somebody that has a lot of integrity and reputation, and he has a lot at stake. And his own objective has been to increase the number of people participating in this process. That is why initially they went around registering more voters, and we now have additional 3.8 million voters added to the voter register. And he didn't do it alone. He actually involved the civil society through the Civil Society Situation Room. So if election is going to be fair and fair, it is not just the day of the election that we look at. We look at all the preparations that were put in place even before the election. Then we also, as a former guest spoke about EFCC through Mr. Magu, what he has done in terms of tracking the funds and making it more difficult for money to play a role in this election. All along, when we've been having bad elections in Nigeria, it's because of the fact that we have allowed money to play a role that is not supposed to play. Money has been used to manipulate from the very beginning. But as we all know, this administration has made it clear that money will not play a role in this election, and which is why for the first time in Nigeria, we have an election that is more tilted towards ideology. People know who the candidates are. Voters have been informed. They've been enlightened. So now, money is playing less of a role. If we don't achieve that, there's no way we can have credible polls in Nigeria. So I'm very happy about the preparations before, not just at the day of the election, because if those preparations are not made and they're not firmly made, there's no way there's going to be any impact on election day. And of course, we'll leave the rest to God. But I know that this election is going to be free and fair because we've already seen the signs of it months before the election. Some people are getting nervous. Some might think they might not win the election, so they start playing the role of alarmist, bringing up things that might not come to place, just to kind of like manipulate ideology or manipulate the mood. But I know that with all that is on ground, definitely it's going to be a fair and fair election. I'm very certain about that.
All right, Jamie, still with you. Yes, you raised so many issues. You talked about the process also, what you've seen so far. Now, we've had elections where we have things being characterized in different forms. We've talked about issue of inconclusive election here and there. We've talked about even money or votes buying. Of course, we saw that last year in some of the elections that were taken. And for now, we're still having some trepidation about what to be. There's still so many uncertainties. For you, what do you think should form the decision for the voters this time?
Voters have to know that their vote it's not only going to count for them, it's going to count for generations to come. Because not just Nigeria, the whole world is going through a very, very economic global crisis. Although things seem to be getting better, it is still very, very, very shaky. That is why we have to get it right by making sure that we vote the right people. People that have credibility, people that we're sure are going to actually put right policies in place. So the issue of vote buying is not something that people should actually engage in terms of like, if they want to give you money, you shouldn't, because of that, sell, your vote, because your vote is not just for you, it's for your children and your, generations to come. The most important thing, I think, is for the government to keep doing what it's doing, which is to ensure that the security agencies play a very, very impartial role, and to keep making sure that people realize that elections is about ideas. If you don't, vote for the people that have the right ideas to move the country forward, you will definitely regret in the long run. So I think there has to be more of enlightenment, more of education, which is part of the reason why the June 12 election was actually very successful. The federal government at that time actually did a lot in terms of like letting people know the importance of why their vote has to count and the importance of why they have to vote with their conscience. It's unfortunate it was annulled, but the process that led to the election was actually what made it one of the freest and fairest elections in this country's history. So the vote must count, and people must know that the vote has a long-term implication in their future.
All right, Jabi Abiola, thank you very much there for your response. We'll come back to you in our Lagos network studios. Let's return to Abuja. Professor Abdullahi Shehu, there are a number of points, but let's zero down on one: our organizational capacity and challenges. Now, I used to say, and this is not being pessimistic, that if you have observed elections in Nigeria, whether during the military transition years or now, you can actually write a story, a pro forma, before the election starts, and forward that story, and everything will fit into place. One, logistics challenges, or logistical challenges. Materials will arrive late in some places. Some things will malfunction. Persons will arrive late, or they will not come. There will be all kinds of, all kinds of matters. Typical, Nigerian setting, whether in the urban or in the rural areas. You have underage persons who are scrambling around and material name not being found on the register, or a person will go to the wrong polling booth. By the time he gets to the correct polling booth, they say it's already after 2, so you can no longer vote. Cognizant of these challenges that are ever present, what, in your opinion, should be the proper managerial approach to all of it, so we don't escalate expectations and say, look, all is set, and then before you know it, everything begins to unravel, and then there will be complaints?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. It's like you are provoking me to even put the cat on the table. Just last month, I finished writing a book. The book will be released tomorrow, and the book is titled Elections in Nigeria, The Long Road to Democracy. And one chapter in that book deals with the elections and electoral processes. The main thrust of any credible election lies in the processes. And as Dr. Kwaja rightly pointed out, there has to be a convergence between the process and the outcome. Now, as it is said in Nigeria 2019 now, we saw clearly what actually gave credibility to the election in 2015. The introduction of the card reader machine really facilitated the conduct of a peaceful, fair, transparent, and credible election. I think to a large extent, we need to improve on that. Looking at the benefits of the card reader machine, we still have a long way to improve it, because despite the use of the card reader machine, we will still need to introduce a system where the votes will have to be counted electronically. If you look at Nigeria today, we have over 100,000 polling booths in the country. About 120. About 84 million people have been registered. Let's say 50 million people will go to vote. All these votes will be counted manually. I don't know the number of personnel that INEC has, but I think that INEC has sufficient personnel to do so. But even at that, it is important that we get to improve the system by introducing some reforms that will enhance that. And I think we lost that opportunity with the Electoral Act that was not signed. Hopefully, if it was signed, that would have addressed this. But it's never too late. We can still improve. With regard to the preparedness of the electoral body, again, everything centers around the electoral body. It's like a football match. There are 22 players in a football field. The person who has the ball is the person whose people's eyes are on. So our eyes are completely on INEC to see what INEC is going to do. In terms of arrangement, people are saying, yes, it's okay. But at the same time, we should not ignore the alarm, the so-called alarm people said some people have raised with regard to the various forms of electoral malpractice that are identified in the book. And they're all associated with corruption. Rigging, for example, many people have expressed their fears with respect to potential rigging. But who is rigging who? You never can tell. Because the opposition party are raising alarm about rigging. The ruling party is also raising alarm about rigging. So we don't know who is rigging who. But this is an area that potentially all election monitors will need to focus on to see whether there is element of rigging. Rigging in what form? Now, the other thing is, somebody said, well, because the INEC person, chairman, is a man of integrity, we need to see the integrity on the ground, as I said, because we have not conducted any presidential election under the present INEC chairman for us to conclude that he will either improve on the record set by Professor Atairu Jega. We saw it in 2015 clearly that Jega made a mark, not only in Nigeria and indeed in Africa. We look forward to what Professor Mahmoud will do, and we hope he will do better, and that will be a mark to say that, yes, we have improved and we have consolidated on our electoral process. Now, the other aspects of preparedness, how the materials are moved from one place to the other. Because when people are crying who about maybe being rigged out, it's not just the thumb printing of ballot papers that is rigging. Where some voting areas are denied access to the voting materials, that is one of the greatest dangers, one of the greatest risks that could undermine the election. So we live to see that. And it is important that we have more observers in place who can raise alarm. But will people respond to the alarm? So all these are issues that will determine the fairness, the transparency and credibility of the outcome of the election and the general acceptability of the election that will reduce all the tension that people anticipated will arise.
Let me pose that question that I just asked a moment ago to Esther Uzoma. Again, cognizant of the challenges we often have with managing processes such as this, what do we need to do, all stakeholders now, from INEC through observers and indeed the voters themselves, to cope with expected and even unexpected issues that might arrive? You will find voting materials will arrive late in some places. You will find, they didn't bring the right materials, they didn't bring the right ballot papers, they did all kinds of, what do we need to do to manage that so that the issue doesn't arise, oh, they're already rigging us out?
All right. In Oshun 1, logistics, we didn't have logistics challenge because I was involved. But the fact of the matter is, it is very, very possible, considering that logistics, INEC is dependent on third parties. Do you know that if, for instance, road traffic workers, if they decide they're not bringing their vehicles, they will ground the elections? Oh, definitely. Because, this is an institution that is existing in a shaky framework. Our systems don't ordinarily function. Okay? But on this very day, we expect everything to be perfect. Our systems don't ordinarily function. You pay a cab driver, listen, come by 7 a.m. He strolls in by 10. All right? And how then do we manage it? The key to managing all these excesses that might occur on this our road, is that it lies on the citizen. Nigerian citizens, I urge you, when you go out in the morning with your PVC to vote, even if the polls do not open on time, stand there. Even if the polls, for whatever reason, let's even assume the worst, that the people who were supposed to convey materials they didn't come on. They were 5 hours late. Don't go. Because if you stand here with your PVC, what we are doing now, because part of the work we are doing is mandate protection. If you stand there and wait with your PVC, eventually the polls will open, even if they didn't open on time. But if for whatever reason at all, they do not open on time, and you get tired and leave, whoever is engineering that late opening would have succeeded. But if you stand there, in 2015, for instance, people in Warimpa were voting up to about 12, 11 a.m. They just stood there. So it is, we must rescue this country if you are interested. Not only will you vote, you stand there and watch. Stand there and find out. We must be interested in we cannot leave it to the political class. So if whatever reason, so many things can happen, it doesn't open on time. Hello? Just stand gidigban with your, we die here.
No, you won't die. No, you won't die.
It's a phrase. So stand there with your PVC and we did the wait. We did the wait.
Yeah, Esther, thanks a lot. The point you just raised now about reliance on third party for logistic issues. Actually, in 2015, we had Professor Atahiru Jaga on Good Morning Nigeria, and of course the FCT, then REC. Well, they had some issues with logistics and had to do with the transport unions. Yeah, there was a breach of contract, but I think they were able to tide it over. But Dr. Kwaja, again, let's return to you on this same issue of, look, being cognizant of the fact that we have challenges all around, and if there isn't perfection in the way we operate our systems, what then can we anticipate and therefore make allowance for without impacting negatively on the freeness and fairness of the elections?
First is to say strongly that there's a very strong conviction amongst Nigerians that if INEC in 2019 operates below or even at the level that we saw in 2015, that has been failure. Because what INEC is supposed to have done by now was first to review what happened in 2015, step up on the successes, overhaul the mistakes or the failures or the challenges so as to give us better elections in 2019. Anything outside that is deliberate. It can't be a mistake because you had all the opportunity for 4 years to prepare. Second is that for planning purposes, and INEC has a department on planning too. For planning purposes, for everything you do, you must have a plan B. So when you say logistical challenges, I ask, didn't you imagine that there might be logistical challenges? Because the same person you've hired, you've signed an MOU with, to give you his cars, the same cars might develop faults on the day of the elections. So the point is, if the vehicles are supposed to be on the ground by 8 a.m. and they are not, by 7:30, you should begin to plan so that at 8, you have a plan B to cover for that lacuna. Now, where you don't have such planning occurring, it means that election has been compromised. And I don't think with the caliber of individuals we have, both at the level of the RECs, at the level of the national commissioners, many of them are well known to us, we don't expect failure. because they've been part of the Nigerian story about why elections should be credible. Now that they've been given the opportunity to prove to Nigerians that they can help Nigerians get credible elections, then they need to work with the media, security agencies, civil society, and Nigerians all over to ensure that we get these elections right. Rigging is not just about thumb printing. We've gone past thumb printing as a form of rigging. Rigging, delaying even the movement of these materials is rigging. Because anything you do that will alter the credibility of that election is rigging. Where money interferes with the process is rigging. So we must begin to look at a more broader issue around how the electoral processes are compromised, so that we will get it right. And I believe, just like my sister hinted, mandate protection is about civic vigilance. That's right. In Bauchi and Kano, we had this theory of Akasa, Atsere, Araka, Ajira. Vote, wait, follow, and ensure that the result that was moved from the polling unit was what was taken to the collation center.
Well, Dr. Kwaja, earlier, I mean, you said, and very rightly so, and the other guests agreed with you, that freeness and fairness of an election, and therefore the credibility of that election, would arise by the harmony between the process and the outcome. Okay, now you just used those phrases in Bauchi and some other location that say that's follow your vote. Let me raise this because it's also been in the public domain. INEC has, in one of its guidelines, simultaneous accreditation and voting. Some parties have kicked against that and say, look, let's do accreditation once and then voting and then you count and all of that. Is there any potential for mischief in simultaneous accreditation and voting? And if there is that potential, how can it be obviated? That's one. Collation. For the two political parties are saying, look, all party agents must have access to the collation center. Is there any mischief that is likely to be cured by having political party agents have access to the collation centers? Again, how to arrive at a harmony between the process and the outcome. First, Esther.
Yes, thank you very much. Simultaneous accreditation and voting is not novel. It was done in Edo State. Yours truly was there. We did it, it was also done. INEC also did it in Osun. Okay? One fantastic feature. In fact, that process, the principle evolved from agitations from civil society. Because we found out from our reports that when people accredit, sometimes they don't come back to vote.
That's right.
So we now said, if once you are accredited, the card reader authenticates your PVC. Just move on and vote. It saves a lot of time. What we saw in 2015, we will not. That's why, for instance, in these recent elections, we saw posts even closing before 2. Because people just go there and, they vote at the same time. Okay? So, it's a welcome, it's a move in the right direction. And for the results, the people's results, from EC860E, it's always pasted, displayed. Even INEC guidelines, listen, it will be displayed once you vote. Stay there, adapt your own PU. They will collect and paste it. Take pictures. Do that. That was why the man in Osun could see that he was 1,000 votes short. He said, listen, what my agents got for me from the PU, you have deducted 8,000. Because people were... The truth of the matter is this, and we have made this point severally, that if you have agents who are dedicated, to your cause, it is very easy for them to collect the results before the final collation. And it's also very easy for them to contest the results when figures do not tally. So what do? At the process of at that PU level, just take the picture, ensure, because it's counted openly on display. Take that picture. If you now move on to the ward level, there is access for accredited agents. And that is also one of the things, one of the thresholds. You know, if for any reason civil society and agents of political parties are not allowed access to the collation center, you know, what's going on? Yes, what is going on, which means it was not transparent. So therefore, in their guidelines, they said, okay, everybody will be allowed access. Accredited personnel, you know, agents of political parties, civil society will be allowed access, you know, to this collation at the local government, even all the levels of collation, so that we can follow it through. That way, you now have independent bodies saying, well, yes, I got 5 at this place. They also recorded 5 for me. That's credibility coming from the people. So in the guidelines that's been recently reviewed, INEC has said yes, access will be granted on all levels of collation to accredited personnel, and that's a welcome development.
Yes. Dr. Kwaja?
Yeah, I think I agree with her on this. Using the accreditation and voting taking place at the same time, reduce the time by half. And when we go that way, it makes it more easier and neater for even the voters. Because when you adopt such an approach, both the election officials, the security agencies, the agents, the voters are all active, and the process will move more smoothly. It gives room for voting to end early, so that people will see that there were no infractions along the line. When voting gets late, people begin to question, because at that point you don't even see clearly what is transpiring or what has transpired, and at that point electoral outcome become doubtful. So it is for us to improve the quality of the electoral process or of the election, and I think for me that approach is a good approach, and we should support it because it helps everyone.
Well, as a matter of fact, the reason given by INEC for the review and introduction of this system, I think, is germane. Because INEC said that they realized that in the last election, about 2 million people who were accredited did not come back to vote. And in order for us to increase the participatory level of the election, it is good to ensure that the election is inclusive, create an environment for people to vote without any difficulty. So to that extent, we welcome this initiative. With respect to the accessibility to the collation center, you know that one of the vulnerable points for election manipulation is the process of collation.
That's right.
From the polling unit to collation centers, to from ward level to local government level, up to the state level, and up to the federal level. Anything can happen. This is a very critical chain in the election process that we really need to be hands-on on it, and that is why there is a lot of expectation on the electoral body to ensure that the process is truly transparent and people are really given access to see what is happening. Because when you see something very transparent, you have no cause to complain about, and therefore that will reduce all the tension that people anticipate that will happen in the election.
All right, Professor Abdullah Shehu, thank you very much. We'll break beckons at this point. I'll let you take some breathers, every one of you. Jamiu in Lagos, of course, we'll get back to you as well. But let's take this break. When we return, we have reactions already too from our viewer. We'll take a look at them and other areas on the program. 4 days to go. It's election time.
The UN compound houses about 400 employees.
The building is not safe.
The Nigerian capital Abuja is still reeling from Monday morning's rush hour bomb.
If the group did carry out the attack, it would be one of its worst.
2 suicide bombings in Nigeria. One targeted a convoy carrying Nigeria's main opposition leader.
Gun attack on the central mosque in North Nigeria's biggest city, Kano.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Over 1 trillion naira housing investment in just 3 years. Federal Ministry of Power works in housing is sinking over 100 billion naira. Family Home Fund is investing over 500 billion naira. Federal Mortgage Bank Limited has invested billions of naira on housing finance. Federal Housing Authority is also spending billions of naira to house Nigerians. With a population of over 180 million Nigerians, housing development never got the desired attention until this time of President Muhammadu Buhari. While shanties and dilapidated buildings characterized Nigerian landscape in the past, the Buhari's government now is sinking billions of naira for inclusive housing for all Nigerians. For 16 years, the Federal Housing Authority had no single finance from the federal government, but within 3 years of President Buhari, the Federal Housing Authority is back on site, building houses for Nigerians. Supporting Mr. President is a support for more houses to Nigerians. Let's ensure continuity. Let's vote for the man who is doing it.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we still have our guests seated, both here in Abuja studio as well as the guest in Lagos, that's Jamiu Abiola. The tweets, we'll look through them now and we'll continue the conversation. From Ibrahim Modu Aji is this tweet: 4 days to go, intense environment with voters who are enthusiastic towards the exercise, towards exercising their civic rights. Politicians are busy maneuvering to ensure victory, and the electoral umpire making last-minute preparation. With all this, let the national interest rule our personal interests.
Now, Hussaini Baba made tweets. Now, from all indications, he writes, the 2019 elections will be violence-free, looking at the way INEC is seeking partnership with the Nigerian police.
Okay, from Festus Akimboyewa, he says, INEC and security agents must be neutral and ensure that we conduct a credible election. Voters should shun violence, and after voting, they must wait patiently for the official announcement of results and ignore any fake announcement of results.
Now, Chris Simeon, I would like to use this medium to appeal to the federal government to caution security operatives not to intimidate voters. Now, security operatives should stay away from the polling booths and allow voters to exercise their franchise. All right, those are some of the tweets that we are taking. And one more time, just to announce again that we have in our possession here at the Nigerian Television Authority a PVC belonging to Mary Nkeru Okeke. The PVC was picked up at an ATM point in Gariketo, Abuja last Thursday, and the Good Samaritan, of course, gave it to us to announce. His name, the name again is Mary Nkeru Okeke. If this is your PVC, please come to the Nigerian Television Authority NTA headquarters in Area 11 here in Abuja. They ask for the General Manager of NTA News 24. Yeah. Mary Okeke, your PVC is here with us at the NTA. Come get it.
You must vote. So
that you can vote on Saturday.
Okay. All right. Thank you for at least for that social work for Nkeru Okeke. Now let's return to Jamiu in Lagos, Jamiu Abiola. Yes, we looked at so many areas of interest, and for everyone who is still having such uncertainty that this election has come and it must hold and it must be free, it must be credible, it must be fair to all concerned. Tell us more, what other things that you've seen, at least from your group, as well as other areas of concern that we must look into, be it from INEC position, the issue of security. There are other concerns about voter apathy over so many things. What more do you want to see being done as we move towards Saturday's polls?
I like people to be objective, and people should be able to differentiate between fake news and real news. The truth of the matter is, this election has actually been helped and promoted by the fact that for the first time in Nigerian history, we have an incumbent president who is not trying to use state resources to come back or to win an election. I think that's a very, 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 very significant, factor that we have to keep in mind and that we have to appreciate. Because in the past, politicians don't actually mind using state resources to win an election. It is not their money, it's the government money. But this is the first time that we have a government that actually believes that state money is for state projects and elections is a question of ideas, a question of dialogue. Now, going back to what we spoke about when we mentioned the issue of accreditation and voting at the same time, simultaneously, I think it's a very, 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 very positive step. And the reason is very simple. When we talk about logistic problems and deployment of materials and the fact that there might be delays for one reason or the other in terms of transportation, time is saved when both processes are taking place at the same time. In case there are delays, as opposed to having the system that we used to have in the past in which we finish the accreditation before voting begins, this time around, when we are doing the both at the same time, if there are any delays in terms of logistics deployment, definitely, time will be saved when we do the two processes at the same time. So that is actually an additional advantage of this new INEC guideline. Another thing I find as a source of concern is the fact that INEC complained last week that a lot of parties are not meeting up with the deadlines in terms of forwarding the names of their representatives, because these representatives have to have identity cards issued to them by INEC, and if political parties don't actually forward the names of these people, and at the end of the day, these people are not given access to the venues they want to be given access to, they now blame INEC. But unfortunately, a lot of political parties are not actually meeting up with the deadline. So they have to step up. I don't know whether the deadline has passed by now, but this is like a process in which everybody is involved. So all stakeholders have to do the right thing. Not that they would frustrate the process, and at the end of the day, they will now blame INEC for something that was obviously their own shortcomings. So I urge political parties to forward the names of their representatives at the deadline and to make sure that they actually have done what INEC has said they should do, so as to have an election that at the end of the day, people will not complain and people will not say INEC did not deliver when it was them that made it impossible for INEC to deliver. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamiu Abiola. Let's return to our guests in the Abuja studios. Professor Abdullahi Shehu, again, one of the features that we find, even though it's in a recession now in our election, has to do with the mechanism of disrupting the process, by which some roughnecks usually will be sponsored to go to the stronghold of their opponents to disrupt the voting, sometimes snatch ballot boxes, even though that is no longer very helpful, or just cause violence, and then the election in those units are cancelled. So, can this be prevented in any way, or can the impact be mitigated?
Indeed, it can. First, we have to identify the specific threats to the election, and we can quickly identify 5. The first one has to do with the role of political talks. Politicians have recruited talks. They follow them during the campaigns. They are likely to disrupt elections in various polling stations. So it's a flashpoint to watch on the role of political talks, even though the Inspector General of Police has already directed that policemen should not escort VIPs, but that is just solving part of the problem. The main problem has to be solved by the politicians themselves on how they will have to control the thugs that they have recruited. They have even given them uniform, and some of them are ready to die for them regardless of whether their families are conscious of what is happening or not. That is one. The second line has to do with the politicians themselves, how they conduct themselves, their utterances. You know, a politician is only interested in winning election. He doesn't care what happens. Let me just win the election, any other thing we can settle. And the reason they do this is because they feel that, they could take advantage of what INEC or our judicial system cannot offer in terms of trying to address and seeking justice from the justice system. They may not get it, so they get it by other means. This is an important area. The third threat and potential risk to the election has to do with the efficiency of the electoral body. The electoral body has to prove that it has planned very well. And if it has failed to plan, then it means that the election is likely to fail. And as a panelist indicated earlier on, once you have a concrete plan to do something, you must have a backup plan in terms of monitoring and ensuring that the plan you have put in place is working efficiently and effectively in order to mitigate the risks that you have identified. So the role of the electoral body is very, very critical in this regard. The third area has to do with the role of the security agents. They are expected to be neutral. But you know, the police and other security agencies are abused and misused by politicians for their selfish interests. They are the ones who will compromise them because they want the outcome to favor them. So to that extent, it's a flashpoint. We have to look at how transparent they are in their conduct and how neutral they are. And finally, we also need to review the role of certain civil society bodies, including religious organizations. All of a sudden, a religious body will get up, or a faction of a religious body or an ethnic nationality will say, we are endorsing or adopting this person. What does this mean? You are provoking reaction from the other party, because once you said you are adopting this person, the other members of the party who are not with that person will certainly come out to say that, well, no, this decision was not taken with my consent and therefore I'm disagreeing. And that is a potential for conflict. So overall, we need to look at these flashpoints very critically and find means and ways by which we can remediate. And briefly, I can mention 3 steps. One, the politicians will have to control their talks. They also have to control their utterances and their own conduct. 3, there are opinion leaders, traditional rulers, and people who can talk in society to ensure that there is peaceful election in Nigeria. And finally, the electoral body and the government of the day. Often you find that violence could be a reaction to what has happened, but people always feel once they announce election and if it is not in their favor, they feel that the incumbent government has not done well. It may not necessarily be so. It may be so in some cases, but we need to understand that violence is part of the outcome of an election that is not free, is not fair, is not transparent. So we have to ensure that these 3 qualities are available for the outcome of an election to be acceptable to all.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdullahi Shehu. Esther, Professor just raised some key things. Yes, we've seen the different rallies, campaign, issue of religion being given up as a trump card, issue of ethnicity and other areas that will be of conflict for people. Really, how do we begin to redirect this conversation for the people? Because give or take, Nigeria will remain after these elections. And we already raised the fact, not just being watched now locally, the international community is watching as well. How do we begin to change this in the mindset of the voter?
Thank you very much. A few days to election. You see, I have certain concerns because what we have seen as build up, like we see state governors who are in effective control of alternate security machineries across the states of Nigeria. It happened in our very eyes. And the states didn't actually take, the Nigerian states now, didn't take very positive steps to curb that excess. We see state governors, they have passed indigenous security laws. You know, I've said this over and over again. They've been getting ready. And now, few days to the election, these people have the backing of their state laws. I've had this conversation severally with with Doc. And he said that they are not state actors. To the extent that these people are sponsored and paid. Prof said you even see them wearing uniforms. Alternate security outfits. Displaying the functions of, in fact, thwarting the monopoly of states to violence. They incarcerate, they try, they have detention centers, and then elections are going on. People have already seen how they deal with people. And another worry besides that is this. You find that in a political party, the division, they are fighting against themselves. I always thought, it's about like, it's the crocodile that eats its own eggs. The crocodile will lay eggs and eat it. What will that crocodile not do to the flesh of a frog if it can eat its own eggs? And we see them telling them, say, listen, if you just come to this place first, I'll show you that I'm the governor. These things are said openly and notoriously and celebrated.
Brazilian.
Yes. And so, and then we are going to vote in this atmosphere. People know that, listen, somebody has alternate security firepower. Let me just use that. And then we are saying, oh, go out and vote peaceful. But there's a problem.
No, but this problem you're talking about isn't widespread. Let's face it.
It's not widespread.
Yeah.
The Nigerian army is across almost 34 states.
Yeah, but not necessarily related to preparations
where
for
is
competitive
this?
elections.
No. What I'm saying is that it started way before now. Where is it not?
But
in the southeast, southwest, north, where don't we have alternate security?
Esther,
they're called vigilantes.
That's
where
right.
don't we have it?
Esther, let me pause you. Let me pause you. What you have described now is fine. But we know that we are approaching the general elections on the, if you like, on the wings, unfortunately, of pervasive insecurity, which is why you have the spread out of the Nigerian armed forces in different parts of the country. But it isn't as if these state vigilantes, or by whatever name called, were prepared specifically for election purposes, nor, as you already earlier admonished, nor should the rest of the citizens who are vigilant shy away, from observing whatever they are doing and being conscious of their presence. I will pause you there, but Dr. Kwaja, was itching to respond.
Yes.
Yeah, because last year, we convened a policy roundtable on, and it was to basically do an appreciative inquiry on the role of non-state security actors with respect to the 2019 elections. Yes. And the biggest question we posed was, will there be instances where individuals and groups that statutorily are not permitted to bear arms will be involved in the elections? And the answer was yes. Yes, because from the northeast down to the south-south, the north-central, we've seen the emergence, the expansion of individuals and groups that are increasingly challenging state monopoly over the use of the instrument of coercion in this country. And with such an environment of insecurity, an average citizen is already afraid.
Exactly.
Already afraid because if the firepower of an individual that is not permitted to bear arms, but yet is bearing arms and is ready to come forward and protect whatever vote for whoever, it means I am not protected. Now, when we did that, for us, the charge for the security agencies was that the federal government has the sole responsibility to look into these issues. Because by virtue of what we have in the Firearms Act, it's only the federal government and the Nigerian police, to be precise, that will give you license to bear arms. So when individuals are in possession of arms, how did they get these arms? Who gave them the permission?
You know what, Dr. Kwaja, again, I pause you. Because in the lead up to the elections, we've had a series of conversations. We discussed the proliferation of small arms and light weapons and the likely impact. We've had the police authorities who will be part of that conversation. And the non-issuance of licenses, for the possession of such weapons. And indeed, what the security agencies themselves have been doing. There have been a number of seizures, if you recall, by the customs and all that. But
can I just say something on that?
Very quickly, yes.
Now, for me, going forward, we want to see stronger, more robust, more constructive interaction between INEC and the security agencies through the Interagency Consultative Forum on Election Security. Because once that harmony is there, it is easy for the security agencies to work with INEC in addressing many of these issues that we are raising.
Professor, I think, well, the point being made about the role of non-state actors is understandable. But in my view, we shouldn't escalate that issue because they have not shown any capability to overwhelm the machinery of the state security in Nigeria. We should put that in abeyance. It's an issue, it's a flashpoint, but it has not reached a point that we should escalate it to overwhelm the police, the Nigerian police, especially in controlling the situation at the voting booths, at the voting stations.
That's right. Hang on a second. As we said, we know where there are security challenges in the country. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. This is AMAC, where our Abuja headquarters studios is in AMAC. Are you going to say that voters will be under intimidation by non-state actors? Certainly not. And most urban areas,
they will try to do so, but I think we can see that the arrangements put in place, the change of security apparatus put in place should be enough to contain that. And we shouldn't escalate that to a point of frightening the voters.
That's right. All right. Gentlemen. Let's go to Jamil Abiola in our Lagos Network studios. Jamil, this is, again, another attack because we're talking about lessons learned and therefore what ought to improve on the process. 2015 was a watershed election in this country. From your observation of goings on and looking into a crystal ball, is it necessarily the case that we have learned appropriate lessons, even though ex post facto we might be in a better position to analyze what has happened in 2019? Have we learned the appropriate lessons, either in terms of the philosophy of approaching elections and saying, look, you don't have to spill blood to get this thing done, and so on and so forth?
We have actually learned a lot of lessons. That election was a very, very successful election, and it's more or less inspiration for us to actually make sure that we don't only do something similar, but even something better. And that's why I was very happy when I was told that even the Nigerian army is deploying more than 95% of its personnel to go around to make sure there is security and stability during the elections. And also, one thing we have to also learn about that election is that it makes us eager to participate, because democracy is not just about voting, it's about increasing participation, not just even during the election, even after the election. And that's why I'm glad that the civil society, through their situation room, is being encouraged to play an active role, which is what it has been doing. This particular INEC has involved civil society throughout the voter registration process. And even when we talk about whatever the INEC has been doing, civil society has been playing a very, very, very active role. And that is exactly why I know that apart from more people voting this time around, because of the fact that we have additional 4 million voters, there are also more specific preparations. Like now, I think as of a couple of days ago, they increased the polling units by more than 50,000 to add to the 119,000, so as to have more people being able to vote conveniently. And definitely, this election is going to even surpass the one that was done in 2015. But there's another factor that I think people should always keep in mind, and I keep emphasizing this because it's very easy to overlook the most significant factors. This time around, money is not playing a role as it used to play before. You know, when you have elections in which money plays the role, as in the significant role, there can never be any progress because, you know, from the beginning, you know, the election has already been defeated. The purpose has already been defeated. But for the first time, as I said before, people are not encouraged to bring money because we have EFCC that is tracking everything. And aside from that, from the top, we have a president that is saying no more. You want to vote for me because you believe in my ideas. But don't vote for me because of money that I'm going to give to you, because that money is for Nigerians and it's going to be used for projects. So I think, you know, the president has actually set the atmosphere for a very free and transparent election. And all we have to do is to participate, not looking at religion, not looking at other factors like tribalism, because at the end of the day, we're all Nigerians. And this is, I think, INEC should keep enlightening people to vote for what they believe in, their ideology, but not anything that is linked to tribalism or linked to religion. I think it's very important for us to also emphasize that fact. Thank you.
All right, so Jamiu Abiola, member Buhari Support Group, and also member of the inaugurated Youth and Women Presidential Campaign Team, and also son of late Chief MKO Abiola. Thank you very much for coming on the program. We thank you for your insights as well. 4 days to go. We know we'll do the countdown 3 days, 2 days, and of course, election day. We'll be here to take a look at what is happening. Thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. We'd also like to appreciate Dr. Chris Kwaja, Watching the Votes Working Group. It was great having you on the program.
Thank you.
Esther Uzoba, always a delight. Thank you very much. Esther is the National Coordinator, Proactive Gender Initiative, and also a barrister at law. Thank you very much for coming
My
to the program.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Appreciation also to former Director General of the ECOWAS Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, Giaba. Thank you very much, Professor Abdullahi Shehu. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Now to our complimentary segment. Let's take a look at sports.